Hey, I'm Sam. Welcome to Brickwall Pictures. Today I'm going through my personal list of my top 100 action films ever made. I get asked what my favorite movie is or what my top 5 or top 10 movies are pretty regularly, and it is so hard to have an answer to that as a cinephile. If I'm going to answer that question, then I want to answer it well and in full. I already put out a comprehensive list of my top 100 horror movies, so go check that video out. There's a link down in the description. Today I'm going to be counting down my top 100 action films of all time, and I also plan on doing a top 250 general films list regardless of genre at some point down the line. So you can subscribe and stick around for that if you feel like it. To be clear, this list is not intended to be an objective or definitive list of the best action films ever made, but instead my 100 personal favorites. And I can assure you that my personal list will not line up with any of the big best action movie lists out there. I'll say up front, I tend to skew toward Asian action cinema, so be prepared for that. Now let's set a couple of ground rules before we get ranking. Number one, only one movie is allowed per franchise. So if I include a particular film on the list, then any sequels, prequels, reboots, remakes, spin-offs, or alternative adaptations are therefore ineligible to make the list. For example, if I wanted to include Iron Man on the list, that would mean that no other MCU movies could make the list whatsoever. Spoiler alert, there aren't any MCU movies on my list anyway. Big shocker, I know. And rule number two, the degree of action in a movie factors into its placement on the list. Plenty of films have a good action sequence or two without really being action films through and through. For example, Old Boy has one of the best fight scenes ever shot, but I wouldn't really call the overall film an action movie, so it doesn't make the cut. That's something I'll be taking into consideration with the films that do make the cut as well in determining if they make the cut and where they rank. Something that is a better overall film could feasibly rank below a film with better and more action. And I'm going to say explicitly that this is my top 100 action movies as of July 2023. My personal favorites are constantly changing as I see more movies for the first time or reevaluate movies upon rewatch. So a couple years down the line, this ranking is sure to look at least a little different. To be frank, I've been working on compiling this list off and on since the middle of 2022, and I've already reordered the entire list several times. So the order is in flux. It's not quite as locked in as the actual films themselves are. This is going to be a long video, so buckle up and let's get ranking. By the way, I'm going to try to cut in clips from the action scenes of these movies, but knowing YouTube, there's a good chance, a very high chance that the video might get blocked. I will dispute it. If I can't win the dispute, I will have to just recut the video without the clips. So if you're not seeing any movie clips, blame YouTube. And here we go. First up, number 100, The Warriors. With a killer soundtrack, a grungy, near-post-apocalyptic feeling view of gang-plagued New York, and a fun blend of both cool and goofy elements, The Warriors is a perfectly stylized, cheesy time. And that cheesiness is definitely part of the enjoyment. It ranks so low because the actual action isn't all that great, but everything around it is so much fun. 99, Kick-Ass. Easily one of the most engaging superhero movies in recent years. It's outside the MCU, it's outside the DCEU or whatever, and it takes a decidedly more deconstructionist approach while delivering plenty of good action and humor. I think Kick-Ass is the only superhero movie on here. 98, Avengement. Scott Adkins has had tons of great badass fight scenes, but many of the movies surrounding those fight scenes often leave a lot to be desired in the low-budget DTV space. Avengement is a step above its low-budget peers and delivers a compelling story with a functional, non-chronological storytelling device, gives Adkins a real character to sink his gold-plated teeth into, and delivers on plenty of bone-crunching action with one hell of a pub fight to tie it all together. Number 97, Mesrine, Killer Instinct. Mesrine, Killer Instinct is the first in a two-part gangster epic shot back-to-back with Vincent Cassel starring as Jacques Mesrine, who was France's public enemy number one for a time. They're both great films, and the second one has the added benefit of the great Mathieu Amalric, but Killer Instinct has the better action and more action. Even if there was no action, these are great gangster biopics that don't seem to have much of a reputation stateside, and they deserve more attention. Number 96, Elite Squad, Enemy Within. This is a sequel to Elite Squad, but I actually watched it first without knowing that it was a sequel, and to be frank, I had no trouble jumping in and following the story and characters. It works on its own. It's set in Brazil, and it's a grand in scope cops versus gangsters film with a ton of intense shootouts made by Jose Padilla and Wagner Moura before they both went on to make Narcos together. It's got some Goodfellas and Heat flavor, and it is exceptionally well made. Number 95, The Executioner. The Executioner is a decent, cheesy time for the bulk of its runtime, then it gets unbelievably fucking rad in the last act. Stick with it through the sort of middling first two-thirds, because the finale is definitely worth it. He punches a dude's eyes out of the back of his head and climbs up a cliff with a grappling hook embedded in a guy's leg, all while wearing a torn white suit with a fishnet half shirt on underneath it. It is the single most bizarre costume I've ever seen an action hero wear, and I love it. Number 94, Roadhouse. This is some grade A, goofy, schlocky fun right here. Is it a great movie on a narrative or technical level? No. Is it even a good movie, technically speaking? I mean, it's debatable, I guess. It's both terrible and the best simultaneously. Laugh with it, laugh at it. Either way, it's a fun time. Supremely quotable with lines like "pain don't hurt," and full of memorable moments like Patrick Swayze ripping a dude's throat out with his bare hands. 93, Death Wish 3. This one is pure insanity coming out of the Cannon Films production company and perfectly representing their trademark brand of over-the-top excess. The first two Death Wish movies are entertaining, but 3 goes off the rails in glorious fashion, with Charles Bronson going out of his way to mail order a handgun bigger than Dirty Harry's and using a gigantic machine gun before taking out the gang villain with a fucking bazooka at close range indoors. This one functions as both a good-bad movie to laugh at and also a legitimately entertaining action movie. 92, Assault on Precinct 13. The low budget holds it back a bit, but this early John Carpenter joint is a clear highlight of the siege film subgenre that we sadly don't see too often anymore these days. 91, Aliens. In the perpetual discourse of Alien or Aliens, I always go Alien. But that doesn't mean that Aliens isn't a damn fine movie too. Find out where Alien ranks in my top 100 horror movies video. Aliens, on the other hand, is a brilliant fusion of sci-fi and action while still retaining just enough of the horror flavor that dominated the first movie. This is how you do a sequel. And every other movie in the Alien franchise is how you don't do a sequel. 90, Outrage. Outrage doesn't have action so much as it has bursts of stylized violence. It's something Takeshi Kitano excels at. He has better movies like Sonatine or Hanabi, but those are even less in the action genre. Outrage just barely squeaks in. It's a compelling Yakuza movie with a complex plot and some exceptionally badass moments of action. The two sequels, Beyond Outrage and Outrage Coda, are unfortunately more like less effective remakes of the first movie. They don't really work so well. 89, Point Break. Keanu Reeves and Patrick Swayze have so much chemistry in this fun story of an undercover FBI agent versus bank-robbing surfers. It's a corny B-movie premise played with earnesty. Forget about her other big Oscar movies. Point Break is Catherine Bigelow's best movie by far. 88, Flashpoint. Flashpoint is a case of the action scenes really doing a lot of the heavy lifting and making up for weaknesses in the story department. It isn't telling a particularly original or even interesting story, but when the action crops up, holy hell is it good. Especially the extended final action sequence, which moves from a solid shootout into a gold dust one-on-one fight between Donnie Yen and Colin Chu. I've used this fight scene as an example of great action in multiple videos on the channel. Number 87, Bullitt. The godfather of the modern car chase. Check out my car chase video essay to hear all my thoughts on the car chase as a type of action sequence overall. 86, Rolling Thunder. Rolling Thunder was once a semi-forgotten 70s action movie that is worthy of rediscovery. I have a full review for this movie on the channel. You can find a link to it in the description. The ending shootout is fantastic and well worth all of the build-up. It feels very Taxi Driver in a way, which makes sense seeing as it was also written by Paul Schrader. 85, The Guest. From the team behind Your Next comes The Guest, a throwback action flick with far more horror energy than you usually find in the action genre. A good Micah Monroe performance and a great Dan Stevens performance anchor an interesting story with a great sense of style and a killer soundtrack. 84, Dirty Harry. A quotable classic with a long string of sequels that are mostly at least halfway decent. But the first is the best in my book by quite some margin, and a big part of why is the villain, Scorpio, a deranged killer based on the Zodiac Killer. Number 83, The Street Fighter. Not Street Fighter, don't confuse it with that video game movie adaptation. This is peak Sonny Chiba, violent to a gratuitous degree and wildly stylized. The Street Fighter offers a unique flavor of martial arts action movie that goes so far over the top it becomes hilarious while still being badass. 82, Shadow. Stunning black and white production design with Yang Jimo's signature eye for cinematography. This belongs to the high art and wuxia branches of action and is a standout in both categories. 81, The Bourne Identity. I think there may be many people who disagree, but the first Bourne movie has always remained my favorite of the bunch, though there's a lot to enjoy in Supremacy and Ultimatum as well. And I actually think it's Supremacy more than Identity that popularized that whole shaky cam, quick cut action style that plagued the US action movie scene for so long. The action isn't as intense or big in Identity as in its two immediate sequels, but each action sequence feels more unique and creative. I love the creativity of the shootout with Clive Owen, all the tactical decision making and clever maneuvering. It's outside the box for an action movie. And I think it has the tightest story of the bunch as well. 80, Lethal Weapon. The buddy cop duo to end all buddy cop duos. Shane Black essentially perfected a subgenre, spawned a wave of imitators and knockoffs, and then ended up parodying his own tropes later on in his career once he shifted toward directing. The humor is great, and the action is pretty good too. 79, Dredd. The movie that bombed despite everybody loving it. Dredd was an unfortunate case of the distribution rollout being horribly fumbled and killing a movie's shot at success and probably sequels. But it luckily gained far more popularity after the home media release. A sequel has been teased forever, and I still hope it comes to fruition, but who knows at this point. Carl Urban is phenomenal in this role. The sci-fi world is impressively believable, given the size of the budget, and it smartly centralizes the story primarily within a single high-rise to keep costs down without hamstringing the story, essentially making it a sci-fi spin on the Raid Redemption's effective formula of badasses on a mission working their way up the floors of a building to take out the big bad on top. Number 78, Commando. This is the apex of the 80s muscle-bound action hero era. Cheesy as hell, but a lot of fun, and quintessential Arnie. 77, Speed. Speed is like Crank, except Jason Statham's heart is a bus. Okay, everyone knows Speed is Die Hard on a bus. That's famously how it was pitched, and it really is a brilliant premise for an action movie. A bus needing to maintain its speed or explode. And hey, look at that. Keanu Reeves is back, and it won't be the last time either. 76, Casino Royale. Daniel Craig's first spin in the Bond tuxedo was a real winner, and I've grown to appreciate it more and more with each subsequent viewing. The parkour chase at the beginning is the clear highlight of the movie for me, and is easily one of the best parkour sequences ever put to screen. But all of the other action is strong as well. I used to prefer Skyfall. After rewatching both, I'm coming around on Casino Royale. That parkour chase goes a long way. That might be the best action sequence full stop in the entire James Bond series. Number 75, Scarface. Scarface is a great gangster film with phenomenal action sequences. If there was a bit more action, I could easily rank this one higher on the list. There's only 2 or 3 full-on action sequences, but hot damn are they good, especially that big ending shootout. That ending shootout is truly a contender for any list of the best individual shootouts ever made, and I might need to make one of those lists at some point too. Number 74, Everything Everywhere All at Once. This is a special, wonderful film. It lives up to its ridiculous title and then some. The action is really strong, but it's also a heartfelt, hilarious, touching, insightful, emotional, devastating, and life-affirming film. It's a beautiful piece of work that seems too jam-packed to work, yet it does. Number 73, My Way. My Way is a South Korean World War II movie that follows two main characters forced to fight multiple armies in different theaters of war over a long period of time. It's a good story that would probably seem far-fetched if it wasn't based on actual events. The battle sequences are incredible and do a great job of splitting the difference between showcasing the harrowing, traumatic warfare and being cinematically engaging action. And those two things often don't mesh in the hands of many filmmakers. Most war films I wouldn't categorize as action movies as well. Number 72, Kingsman: The Secret Service. The sequel and prequel have both gone a long way towards erasing pretty much all of my goodwill for the series, but luckily this first movie still kicks ass. The action is great. My God, the Freebird church sequence is really all that needs to be said. Number 71, Mission Impossible Fallout. I will say I'm recording this before Dead Reckoning Part 1 is out. It comes out in like a couple days, but I haven't seen it. The latest Mission Impossible at the time of recording is Fallout, and it's my favorite of the bunch by far. I honestly don't care too strongly about the first three in the series. I like PSH in 3, otherwise those first 3 I can take them or leave them. Not many movie series peak with their 6th movie, but that's what Fallout managed. The frequency, duration, and placement of the action scenes throughout Fallout is just perfectly arranged. Henry Cavill impressed me in his villain role, but the real MVP was that nameless martial artist guy in the bathroom fight. Number 70, Rambo. While I believe First Blood is the better movie, it isn't as much of an action movie as people who haven't seen it might expect, judging from where the sequels took the character. That first movie is more of a drama with some light thriller elements, if anything. But Rambo, aka the 4th Rambo movie, because the title is stupid, has the best action by far. The amount of gore and destruction is unbelievably excessive, and it helps the action stand out in a great way. 69. RoboCop. A classic of Paul Verhoeven's particular brand of satirical excess. Funny, violent, gratuitous in the best ways, and full of iconic lines and moments. Kurtwood Smith and Miguel Ferrer are both at 11 in their supporting roles, and both kick so much ass. Plus Ray Wise and Dan O'Herlihy, I mean, come on. You can't have 3 Twin Peaks dudes in a movie without getting me on board. RoboCop is an interesting anomaly in that it doesn't really have good action choreography at all. RoboCop as a character is so slow and lumbering, and also basically indestructible. So the shootouts are mostly just him standing in place or slowly walking forward while gunning people down. It doesn't sound like it would be exciting, but it's that excess that Verhoeven brings to the table that makes it work. Some of the best squibs you'll ever see on screen. Number 68, Big Trouble in Little China. John Carpenter didn't work in the action genre often, but he turned in a classic when he pulled inspiration from the cheesy side of the Hong Kong action industry and went absolutely buck wild with unbridled creativity. The action itself, honestly, isn't anything incredible, but the entire movie is non-stop crazy and endlessly fun. 67. Machete. Expanding the fake trailer from Grindhouse into a full feature film could have been disastrous, but Machete retained that intentionally ridiculous and over-the-top spirit and is a total blast. It's a perfect Danny Trejo role, and the action is great and uses the film's intentional goofiness to deliver wildly creative set pieces. Like my favorite, which is Machete ripping out a man's intestines, leaping out a window, and using them to swing down through the window of the next floor. Incredible. The sequel did not work for me nearly as well, but I would still be first in line if they ever do end up making Machete kills in space. 66. Face Off. The first John Woo movie on the list, and far from being the last. It's a ludicrous premise with 2 bonkers lead performances and Woo's signature Bullitt opera stylings. Goofy, fun stuff. 65. Django Unchained. Most of Quentin Tarantino's movies have moments of action in them, but I would hesitate to call most of them action movies. Django crosses that threshold and has plenty of fun action all throughout. The Candyland shootout is Tarantino's best shootout in my book, hands down. 64. A Bittersweet Life. Back to South Korea for a badass gangster flick from Kim Ji-woon with the always cool Lee Byung-hun in the lead role. The story's a little bit derivative, but the stylization elevates the script, and fantastic action scenes make the overall package great. The highlights are the tense gun-assembling standoff where Lee Byung-hun and an opponent race each other to put two disassembled handguns back together and shoot each other, and the ending nightclub shootout, which is unbelievably good. That's one hell of an underrated shootout right there. Real cream of the crop gunplay in the finale. 63, The Villainess. Phenomenal action. Pretty terrible everything else, to be honest. It says so much about the caliber of action here in The Villainess that I'm ranking it this highly despite getting virtually nothing out of the story and characters. I honestly found the plot a little bit incomprehensible, but that's how goddamn good the action scenes are. The camera work is extremely impressive as well, so fluid and inventive and pulling off these seemingly impossible angles and movements. 62, From Dusk Till Dawn. From Dusk Till Dawn is another one that also made my top horror list. It's a great genre fusion, and as I've said before, that radical midpoint genre shift is one of the defining structural choices in all of cinema for me. 61, Total Recall. Paul Verhoeven's back, and this time he's ditching Detroit for Mars. RoboCop and Total Recall go so well hand in hand, but outside of the action, Total Recall is just a surprisingly good story, using Philip K. Dick as the source material, and it features one of the better Arnie performances out there. 60, The Assassin. One of the most beautiful action movies ever made. Every single shot in The Assassin is one that you could hang on your wall as a work of art. 59, Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's Indiana Jones. What more needs to be said? For most people, their pick for favorite usually comes down to the first or the third movie. I like them about equally, so Last Crusade could easily take the spot instead, but I think the first one has a few more iconic moments and a bigger sense of adventure. To be honest, the choreography for the fist fights is actually pretty bad, which everyone seems to just overlook. The fights are so slow and awkward, and the bad guys wait for so long between moves for Indy to hit them. It says a lot about how great the stunts and chases and whatnot are that they fully compensate for the weak fisticuffs. 58, Yes, Madam. The film that launched the career of Michelle Yeoh and the film debut of Cynthia Rothrock. Two of the most badass women in martial arts join forces in an action movie that is absolutely worthy of their combined talents. The plot isn't anything great, and the film's middle stretch is a little rough, but it starts strong and ends with an insanely good extended final fight scene that perfectly shows off the strengths of Yeoh and Rothrock equally. 57, Who Am I? It's Jackie Chan, and this time he's got amnesia. Great fights as always, and some of Jackie Chan's best stunts, including the iconic building slide. 56, The French Connection. The French Connection is a deserving classic. Everyone knows that car chase. It's great, and I talked about it in my car chase video essay. But it's not the only great car chase William Friedkin did, and speak of the devil. Number 55, To Live and Die in L.A. Hell yeah, that's right. Back-to-back William Friedkin. To Live and Die in L.A. You may have heard otherwise, since it has a pretty contentious reputation, but this was Friedkin's attempt to recapture the magic of the French Connection for the 80s, and I think he succeeded. It's a fun story with a great Willem Dafoe villain role, a compelling William Peterson lead role, and a story that goes in some unexpected directions. And of course, the car chase, man. The car chase is the goddamn bee's knees. It's another one that I featured extensively in my car chase video essay. That man, Friedkin, knew how to shoot a car chase. 54, Lady Snowblood. One of the key inspirations for the badass Kill Bill, and it's a kick-ass action movie in its own right, obviously. 53, Crank. The purest cinematic depiction of adrenaline you will ever find. It's such a brilliant premise for an action movie. A guy needs to keep his adrenaline pumping at all times or his heart stops. Genius. It's speed, but the bus is Jason Statham's heart, like I said before. 52, Taegukgi, The Brotherhood of War. Leave it to South Korea to quietly churn out two of the best World War II movies ever made. This is from the same director of the aforementioned My Way. I've sung the praises of Taegukgi numerous times in the past on the channel and over on my side channel, Brickwall Unplugged, where you can find me doing unscripted, off-the-cuff, and live videos if you if you're interested in that kind of thing. Taegukgi is a perfect blend of exciting action and the horrors of war, with inexperienced young soldiers forced into battle, grand in scope while telling a compelling personal story. It's just an all-around great film. 51, Banlu 13, also known as District 13 or District B13. Parkour is such a cool form of movement that unfortunately remains underutilized in action cinema. And when it is incorporated, it's often done pretty poorly when people try to jam it into action movies without giving it the proper time and care that it needs. Banlu 13 is a full-blooded parkour movie through and through, and it's great. David Bell and Cyril Raffaelli are both badass, and they deserve more big roles, frankly. If you watched the shitty American action flick Brick Mansions, you might not have realized that it's actually a remake of this movie. And obviously, Banlu 13 is infinitely better. 50, Rumble in the Bronx. Jackie Chan's back, and it is far from the last time he shows up on this list. Jackie's trip to the Bronx is a super fun time. Just ignore the fact that it obviously wasn't shot anywhere near the Bronx. There's like mountains in the background and stuff. It's got excellent fight scenes and some killer stunt work. 49, Snowpiercer. Bong Joon-ho delivers sci-fi social commentary aboard a high-tech train endlessly circling the globe after the planet has frozen over. This film is impressive on so many levels. It's a bit blunt with its themes, sure, but it makes its point well, and it does it while delivering some great action. The shootout between different train car windows as the train winds around a long bend is ingeniously conceived and creative. Totally unique. 48, The Night Comes for Us. The goriest action movie I've ever seen. There might be a gorier action movie out there somewhere. I haven't seen like Adam Chaplin yet, for example, which I know has a gory reputation. The Night Comes for Us is gory to the point of almost feeling more like a horror film than an action film. Joe Taslim is great, and so is Iko Uwais and the rest of the large supporting cast. It leaves a couple of plot threads dangling for potential sequels, I guess, and the plot isn't really that original, but there's some fun world building, and the violence is just out of this world. 47, Hardcore Henry. I don't know why I seem to love Hardcore Henry so much more than everyone else, but I really do. The stunt work is insane. The first-person POV is handled exceptionally well. It's funny with a great Charlton Copley role, actually several roles, and the action sequences are creative, distinctive, and hardcore as fuck. Ilya Naishuler's next movie, Nobody, with Bob Odenkirk, got way more love and acclaim, and I thought that one was, pretty entertaining. But I think Hardcore Henry is just leagues ahead. 46, Ronin. Here's another movie that I have a whole review for, so you can go watch that video. Actually, I have 2 videos about it because I talk about it in my car chase video essay as well. I'll keep it quick here and just say the real selling point here is the pair of top-tier car chases. 45, The Protector. Not the Jackie Chan Protector, the Tony Jaa Protector. Tony Jaa is such an unbelievable physical specimen, and it's a shame that he's only had a couple of movies that really utilized him correctly and got the most out of him. A lot of his movies aren't great, including the sequel, The Protector 2, which, watch that one if you want something to laugh at. It's enjoyably bad. The Protector is about a man who goes berserk after his elephants get stolen. The one-take restaurant fight scene is a true marvel, and the bone-breaking showcase is as hilarious as it is badass. Number 44, The Way of the Gun. This is an obvious favorite of mine. It's actually one of the first movies that I ever made a video essay about. I dissected the film's ending shootout, which is really the gold standard of shootout in my book. It blows my mind that this film continues to be so underrated. It's still got a rotten score on Rotten Tomatoes. How is that possible? It's a great movie. Number 43, True Lies. One of Arnie's best roles, hands down, and one of James Cameron's best movies. It's got a great script that delivers on tons of memorable and funny moments, and of course, lots and lots of action. 42, The Man from Nowhere. It's a cliche storyline that you have undoubtedly seen before at least once, if not multiple times, but it's told with much better action than any other incarnation of this story. From the excellent gunplay to the godly knife fight, The Man from Nowhere is badass to the bone. 41, Hard Target. I have a video about this one as well. John Woo's first Hollywood movie was also his best Hollywood movie in my book. Certainly not his most popular, and certainly not his best overall movie. But I think you can really see that the American way of filmmaking hadn't fully sunk its hooks into Woo yet. He was coming hot off the heels of Hard Boiled. Woo hadn't yet been corrupted or watered down in his style by the Hollywood film industry. That would come later on. Check out my Hard Target video where I break down why it's badass. You can find that down in the description. 40. Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. This film breaking through in the West as strongly as it did was a real game changer for a lot of moviegoers and the film industry as a whole. This is the right kind of influential, though it led to plenty of other inferior imitators and a gross abuse of wire work from people who didn't really understand the wuxia genre. Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon is a breathtaking spectacle. It's visually stunning, epic in scope, and the sword fights slap to top it all off. 39. Shoot 'em Up. This film has flown too far under the radar for way too long. It is slick, hilarious, and has some of the most creative shootouts you'll find in any Western-made action movie. Paul Giamatti and Clive Owen are both so good in this. It'll make you look at carrots in a whole new way. 38. No Tears for the Dead. From the director of The Man from Nowhere and similar in a lot of ways. Just like before, it's a cliche story, but it's executed with style and an excellent lead performance from Dong Gun Jang. This dude is just effortlessly badass while also managing to deliver a believable, emotional, dramatic performance. The high-rise shootout sequence is so creative and clever on a conceptual level, and it's executed perfectly. It's a phenomenal action sequence. And the rest of the action, great as well. Number 37, Wheels on Meals. Jackie Chan's back with his dumbest titled movie. Yeah, it's Wheels on Meals. That's the title, not Meals on Wheels. Supposedly it was done out of superstition, but come on, that's a ridiculous reason to pick a title that just makes no sense. At any rate, it's one of Jackie Chan's best. There are some slow patches, but the third act is just flawless. Jackie's fight against Benny the Jet is one of the all-time great one-on-one fights. And luckily, it wasn't the only time they fought each other. 36, Battle Royale. All I gotta say is, fuck you Hunger Games and fuck you Fortnite. This is the only Battle Royale that matters. 35, Sin City. Highly stylized, hyper-violent noir. The visual style is striking and holds up perfectly today, and the vignette nature of the plot is the perfect way to adapt this graphic novel series. The characters are also impossibly badass. Clive Owen as Dwight, Bruce Willis as Hartigan, and especially Mickey Rourke as Marv. A trio of bad motherfuckers if ever there was. 34, Blade of the Immortal. Takashi Miike went all out for his 100th film. Yes, you heard that right. The man has directed 100 movies. Actually, he's already made a bunch of others. He's past 112 by the time I started making this video. And it'll probably be even higher by the time you're seeing this video. Blade of the Immortal opens up with a gargantuan action set piece that puts the big action finale of most movies to shame. And you better believe that McKay keeps upping the ante and delivers an even bigger finale. The climax is a big bloody battle sequence that goes on for 40 straight minutes, and it's thrilling the entire time. The only thing that holds this film back from ranking even higher is a bloated runtime and an overstuffed plot that tries to cram in a few too many subplots for its own good. Feels a little episodic, almost like they're adapting a TV show. Number 33, Collateral. Michael Mann is one of the undisputed masters of the shootout. Collateral is easily one of his best. The word cool gets thrown around a lot, but it is so well suited to this film in particular. There isn't really all that much action, but it's perfectly executed when it shows up like punctuation. It's a good story, a great script, and two fantastic lead performances with both Tom Cruise and Jamie Foxx doing some of the best work of their respective careers. 32, Hero. Even more so than Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, to me, Hero epitomizes the wuxia genre and the beautiful action aesthetic in general. The use of color alone never ceases to be stunning, and the overall cinematography is some of the best ever captured. And of course the action is great too, with the top highlight being the mind fight between Jet Li and Donnie Yen. 31, Kill Bill Volume 1. I guess you could put the whole bloody affair in here if you wanted to combine them. The Crazy 88 sword fight alone is enough to earn Kill Bill a spot on the list. And that's not even getting into how great the Vernita Green fight is. Plus, come on, it's Tarantino. It's a top-of-the-line revenge story wrapped around the big action showstoppers. 30, The Blade. Not Blade, The Blade. From action maestro Suey Hark comes a classic tale of a one-armed swordsman. It's a genuinely strong and emotional story with good performances, but what really makes it stand out is the main character's fighting style. This swordsman fights unlike any other swordsman you've ever seen. This dude spins like a motherfucker, and it is a sight to behold, especially in that final sword fight, which is just pure kinetic insanity with wild camera work to match. 29. The Matrix. I'm sure many people would rank The Matrix even higher. I frequently see it land at people's #1 spot. The Matrix was groundbreaking, innovative, and influential in many ways. The Matrix is an excellent piece of work. The lobby shootout alone is a masterclass in action filmmaking. Number 28, Righting Wrongs. Ewan Biao and Cynthia Rothrock are both the best they ever were in leading roles. Corey Ewan's direction is fantastic, and it's so much fun that he cast himself as the over-the-top schlubby cop. He kills that role while he kills it behind the camera, too. Melvin Wong makes for a good villain, and the script makes some genuinely shocking decisions that I was absolutely not expecting, which, let's be honest, is quite rare to find in a martial arts movie. Not often many surprises to go around. 27. Martial Arts of Shaolin. This was the first phenomenal martial arts movie of Jet Li's career. His youthful appearance directly ties into the plot, as this is part of the Shaolin Kids series. The fight scenes are grand in scale. I mean, just look at how many people fight on screen simultaneously. And the fights all take place in beautiful, breathtaking locations, like fighting on the actual Great Wall of China. Number 26, Predator. Predator is a brilliant blending of the sci-fi, action, and horror genres. It made so much sense to smash this together with the Alien franchise, and it's a damn shame that they didn't get it right on either attempt, because there's so much potential there. With the constant reboots and requels that keep getting forced on us, Alien vs. Predator is one reboot or requel or whatever the hell that I would actually like to see. Maybe the success of Prey will make that happen, though there still hasn't been another Predator movie that came anywhere near the quality of the original. 25, Iron Monkey. From Yuan Wu Ping, this is a kung fu flick that feels much older than it is. It's using the contemporary techniques of its day to deliver what feels like a stylistic throwback to kung fu classics of years past, which Yuan Wu Ping was also involved in. It also pretty handily outdoes those old classics. The big climax, set atop burning fire poles, is just insane and super cool. Number 24, Fist of Legend. One of Jet Li's best. This just might contain his smoothest and slickest fight scenes. His big final fight against Billy Chow is perfect, and all the action leading up to it is excellent as well. Li is so goddamn fast in this movie. I've mentioned it before in other videos, but Fist of Legend is the movie where Jet Li kicks 7 different dudes in the span of just 4 seconds. I feel like that really says it all. Number 23, John Wick Chapter 2. And here's where John Wick lands. I'm sure you knew this series would pop up on the list somewhere, but maybe not on this spot and maybe not this entry. To be frank, it was a tough call between Chapter 2 and Chapter 4 for me. Those are the two best. And honestly, after rewatching 4 a couple times in the future, that one might jump up front. I do think that 4 has probably the best action sequences of the franchise, but as an overall film, it's so bloated and overlong, and I think the script is flat out weak. So I opt for Chapter 2 as the stronger overall piece of work. Chapter 2 has the perfect number of shootouts, and they all feel distinct from one another. There's also a great amount of variety within them. Cassian is a great way to mix things up with a fighter who can hold his own against John. And honestly, Common really impressed in the role. He did a good job physically. I have some issues with the extent of the world building at play, but I have even more issues with Chapters 3 and 4. Number 22, A Better Tomorrow 2. One of John Woo's absolute best, but he still has more to come. A Better Tomorrow was quite good, but A Better Tomorrow 2 just kicks its ass up and down the block. This is how you do a sequel. I know John Woo was a little mixed on it after his rift with Suey Hark, but I think it turned out great. You can feel a definitive evolution in John Woo's filmmaking style, despite the films only coming out a year apart. This is really the start of John Woo's golden age in my eyes, which to me lasts from about 87 to 92. The fact that a battle axe and katana inexplicably get introduced into the final shootout is just perfect. 21, Grindhouse. I bet most people weren't expecting this one. I adore Grindhouse, and I jump at the chance to include it in any list. It's in my horror list too, since it ticks both boxes. It's also a clever way for me to sneak two movies into a single spot in here, because Grindhouse is a double feature consisting of a zombie action flick made by Robert Rodriguez and a car chase 70s throwback flick made by Quentin Tarantino, presented with fake trailers and theater advertisements and whatnot in the middle. It's a package that speaks so strongly to me and my personal love of sleazy trash from the Grindhouse exploitation film era. And let's not mince words, that car chase in Death Proof is the best car chase ever shot. Number 20, Fearless, also known as Jet Li's Fearless. And his name being in the title is actually rather appropriate, because I think it just might be his best, or at least it's my favorite. I was honestly a little surprised to come to that conclusion, since it was made in 2006, way after his heyday, and from the director of Freddy vs. Jason, no less. But after revisiting it multiple times along with Lee's other movies, I really do think it stands a cut above. Old school kung fu fans are still likely to opt for some of Lee's older movies, and that's fine. Fearless is packed with tons of martial arts and sword fighting scenes that are all exceptionally well executed and more creative and inventive than usual, finding unique ways to mix up each of the numerous action sequences. On top of the action, it's a great story, and Lee gives one of his best and most emotional performances. Number 19, Lone Wolf and Cub, Baby Cart at the River Styx. The entire 6-part Lone Wolf and Cub movie series is definitely worth watching, but my favorite installment is undoubtedly Baby Cart at the River Styx, which is the second movie in the series. It's also the most batshit insane of the bunch, which is a big part of why I love it so much. Seriously, this one is bonkers. It feels like they were on hallucinogenics when they made it. Be prepared for an ultra-violent samurai movie that has both the prestige factor and the cheese factor in spades. Number 18, The Good, the Bad, and the Weird. I will never stop singing the praises of this movie. One of my favorite action movies, one of my favorite South Korean movies, and one of my favorite Westerns. Head on over to the Brickwall Unplugged channel, that's my second channel, where I did a Best Westerns tournament, and The Good, the Bad, and the Weird was part of that tournament, so go see where it ranked. Exciting shootouts are a staple of the Western genre, but most Westerns fall short of being full-blooded action movies. That is not the case with The Good, the Bad, and the Weird. This is a huge movie with constant bombastic action scenes. The scale of the action set pieces is just mind-boggling. Go check this one out immediately. It deserves way more love. Number 17, Dragons Forever. Dragons Forever was the official final film from The Three Dragons, also known as The Three Brothers and a couple other nicknames. I'm talking about Jackie Chan, Sammo Hung, and Yuen Biao. They were a real dream team together, and Dragons Forever gives all three of them their time to shine, both solo and together. You would never know how fractious the behind-the-scenes creation of it was. As if those three kicking especially brutal ass wasn't enough, you also get a rematch between Jackie Chan and Benny the Jet 4 years after their fight in Wheels on Meals. Just like before, their fight is one of Jackie's best. 16, Terminator 2. Honestly, it was pretty tough for me to decide between The Terminator and Terminator 2. Most people prefer T2, and when it comes to the best action movie, I think I have to agree. Though the police station shootout and the tech noir shootout, even the big truck chase at the end are all excellent from the original, and I do kind of prefer the tone and atmosphere of the original. But I think 2 is the better, bigger action movie. Number 15, Desperado. Robert Rodriguez's best actioner, hands down. That bar shootout is so goddamn good. Truly one of the best shootouts ever made. And the other action scenes in the film are no slouches either. He takes what worked so well about his low-budget El Mariachi and ratchets it all up as high as you could possibly take it. Number 14, Chocolate. We are back in Thailand, and we're back with the director of The Protector, whose name I can't really pronounce. I'll try. Prachia Pinkeu. I'm sure I butchered that. I don't know how to say it any better than that. But this dude really has made some of the best martial arts movies out there. That being said, he is also the guy who directed the hilariously bad Protector 2, so maybe let's not go hog wild. Chocolate is a perfect showcase for the remarkable talents of Jija Yanin, just like his earlier movies were a perfect showcase for Tony Jaa. And just like Tony Jaa, Jija Yanin sadly hasn't really had many other great roles that utilize her to her full potential. It's kind of just this one movie where she's really sold on all fronts. This is one of those action movies where the fights just look so painful, And when you know that they do full contact fight scenes over in Thailand, it just really drives that point home. Not to mention the end credits of the movie that showcase all of the egregious injuries that everyone on the stunt team suffered. Number 13, Bullet in the Head. One of John Woo's less discussed movies, owing to it being quite a bit harder to get a hold of than some of his others, but it's absolutely one of his best. The backstory is that it was Woo's original idea for Better Tomorrow 3, but after his falling out with Suey Hark, who made off on his own A Better Tomorrow 3 without Woo, Woo in turn had to retool the story and characters to make it work as a standalone outing, which became Bullet in the Head. Released between The Killer and Hard Boiled, Bullet in the Head is solidly from Woo's golden age, and is full of phenomenal action sequences. It's a saccharine but effectively emotional story as well. It feels like perhaps the purest synthesis of Woo's exploration of the intersection between male friendship and violence that permeates much of his best work. Number 12, 13 Assassins. Takashi Miike essentially takes the premise of 7 samurai, adds 6 more killers into the mix, makes it excessively bleak to the point of becoming a thriller, and cranks the action up to insane heights. I don't know if the record still stands technically, but I do know that when 13 Assassins hit theaters in 2010, it set the world record for the longest battle sequence ever committed to film. You would probably expect that to be found in some war epic, but no, you gotta go all the way back to feudal Japan to find it. Outdoing even the Blade of the Immortal, this battle sequence goes on for 45 straight minutes and is gripping for the entire duration with buckets of blood, creative choreography, and more badass moments than you can count. Add a perfectly detestable villain on top, and you've got one of the best samurai movies ever made, as far as I'm concerned. 11, Ong Bak Thai Warrior. The last Thai martial arts flick on the list, again with Tony Jaa and again from the same director, whose name I can't pronounce. As I already alluded to, Ong Bak is the perfect showcase for the unbelievable athleticism of Tony Jaa. The physical feats he pulls off in this film seem genuinely superhuman. The story goes that Tony Jaa used to watch action movies from other countries without realizing that they were using special effects and wires and whatnot. So he taught himself how to replicate those actions using only the power of his natural body. And yeah, he can do it all for real. Like Jackie Chan, this is a dude who does not need special effects. He is the special effect. And we're finally down to the top 10. Number 10 is Mad Max Fury Road. Fury Road is a real masterpiece from a top-notch visual director returning to the franchise that helped put him on the map. Contrary to popular opinion, I actually don't like the first Mad Max movie at all, really. Road Warrior is great, but Fury Road just outdoes it in all regards. I've often said that I'm not a spectacle-driven person when it comes to cinema, but this is exactly the kind of jaw-dropping spectacle that I can get behind. Number 9 is one that lands at number 1 for a lot of people. Number 9 is Die Hard. You show me someone who doesn't love Die Hard and I'll show you a liar or a contrarian. Die Hard with a Vengeance is fun. 2 and 4 are decent, I suppose. 5 sucks ass through a bendy straw, but the legacy of the original is unassailable. On my last rewatch, I was struck by just how incredible the screenplay is, which is not often the element that shines the brightest in an action film, but it is in Die Hard. It's a perfect script, and, well, everything else lives up to that standard. Number 8, Heat. Michael Mann's masterpiece. One of the best heist films ever made, in addition to being one of the best action films. The street shootout following the robbery is a strong contender for the best individual shootout ever put to screen. And Heat has plenty of other good action, too. Plus, excellent performances from a jam-packed cast of legends and a great story to cap it off. Number 7, Ip Man 2. For me, the Ip Man series peaked with the second entry, and I'm someone who loves the first and third movies as well. It was just the fourth one that didn't wow me. A big part of why Ip Man 2 shines above the others is actually Sammo Hung, who gives a strong, dramatic performance in a character that is more complicated than first meets the eye, and who delivers my favorite action sequence of the entire series, when he and Donnie Yen go at it on top of that round table as it moves all around. It's such a perfect kung fu scene setup, and it's executed brilliantly. Also, the Twister is a great villain, and Donnie Yen, like in all the other movies, kicks so much ass. Number 6, The Killer. It was tough picking my favorite John Woo movie. Take it as a strong endorsement of that legend's abilities that so many of his movies made my list. The Killer finds him working at the height of his powers and delivering a melodramatic but effective story with so many killer shootouts. Pun intended, I guess. Number 5, Project A. One of Jackie Chan's best. The cast members are all in top form, and Chan's stunt work here is just on another level, with the clock tower drop in particular. It's also a fun period romp with an effective pirate genre fusion and lots of effective humor alongside all the great action. Number 4, Police Story. Another of Jackie Chan's best. Just like Project A, Police Story finds Chan pushing the action and the stunts in particular so far into just recklessly dangerous territory. The bus chase near the start would be enough death-defying antics for an entire lifetime for most performers, but for Jackie Chan, it's not even enough for a single film. The electrified pole slide that ends the movie remains jaw-dropping no matter how many times you see it. And it arrives at the tail end of the extended mall fight sequence, which is easily one of Chan's best 1v-many fight scenes. And we finally reach my top 3. I didn't do this intentionally, but it shook out that my top 3 sort of represent my number 1 pick for 3 key action subgenres, which feels fitting since different types of action can be difficult to compare. So you can consider the following 3 films the winner of their own sub-competitions in a way. Number 3, Hard Boiled. John Woo's best, and honestly it was so close with The Killer. That's how good they both are. Hard Boiled is my number 3 all-time action movie pick, but also my pick for the single best straight-up shoot-'em-up flick ever made. Woo is the undisputed master of the Bullitt opera for good reason. Hard Boiled found him at the absolute top of his game, delivering several of the best shootouts ever made. The tea house, the hospital, the warehouse. Every moment of gunplay is certifiably iconic, and you better believe there's a shit ton of it. Number 2, Legend of the Drunken Master. This is the second Drunken Master movie. My pick for Jackie Chan's single best movie, and for the best straight-up roster of fight choreography ever arranged in a martial arts flick. Every single fight is so complex and fast and impressive in all regards. From the opening fight where Chan and Lau Kar-Lung fight sword v spear in the tiny confines underneath a train, to the stunning final fight where Chan uses his drunken boxing against Ken Lo, his real-life bodyguard, while breathing fire and acting like a maniac. This is the perfect kung fu film in my eyes. And number 1. What is number 1? What is absent here? What is conspicuously absent? It's The Raid 2. With the best shoot-'em-up movie and the best kung fu movie out of the way, what could possibly fill the final spot except for a film that blends every element of the action genre together and executes everything in bravura fashion through the unique style of Gareth Evans. Some prefer the first Raid movie for its more straightforward narrative, tighter runtime, and confined nature, and I adore that one too. But The Raid 2 surpassed it, and honestly, the rest of the action genre along with it for me. The sprawling crime storyline works so well and has only continued to get stronger and stronger with every rewatch. It's a gangster epic in the tradition of something like Goodfellas, but executed as a gory action film, and I just think that's neat. As far as modern action goes, The Raid 2 is on a whole different plane of existence. And as far as overall action goes, The Raid 2 set the new gold standard and is yet to be outdone. I can't even tell you how many times I've watched this film and forced other people to watch it, and I could watch it again anytime. It is perfect. That's 2 John Woo in the top 10 and 3 Jackie Chan in the top 5. Obviously, the Hong Kong action scene is where it's at, in my opinion. This list hopefully gave you some new action movies to check out, so go pop one on. If you're a horror fan too, be sure to check out my top 100 horror movies list, and stick around Brickwall Pictures for my eventual top 250 films of all time, regardless of genre, along with all of my other reviews and video essays and whatnot. So long.